Morgan, something is wrong with you. Introduction: I'm King Lot. That's the guy whose wife is very famous, Morgan, and his children are also very famous, Gareth. Unfortunately, none of my family has a good end. In order to avoid this teasing the fate of people, I decided to eat and wait to die. As long as you don't die, you won't die. My name is Morgan, and I just want my status. I thought my marriage would only be a political transaction, but I didn't expect that I could hear my husband's voice. Morgan, she still doesn't know that the future throne does not belong to her but to her sister. Unfortunately, King Arthur is just a guy who only knows about war but not governance. Development is the last word. Productivity is fundamental. Lot. So, my wife Morgan, why has she changed? The first chapter is the type month. Chapter 1, Seek Collection. In June, Britain. Even on the island, the weather started to heat up. Even at night, the heat is unabated. People can't wait to put down all the mess and rush to the north, and then take a boat out to the north of Scotland to continue north. An army is stationed here on the vast grassland. There was a fence around it, and every few meters, a tall warrior in armor stood guard. On the periphery, a trench several meters deep was dug. If someone looks carefully, they can see clearly that there are still a pile of nails and triangles in this trench. And above those nails, there was a faint blue light exuding, and on the inner side of this trench, it looked like a flat ground, and there were countless traps hidden. If anyone thinks he has seen a trench and sneaks past it and he will be fine, he will taste the power of the trap. Anyone who saw it would take a breath. Isn't this just a temporary camp? It's too stable. And inside the fence, there are tents after another. At this moment, in the middle tent, a bunch of big men surrounded a young man. The young man was wearing a silver fox shawl, a silver armor underneath, holding a wine sack in one hand, and was pouring wine into his throat at the moment. With blonde hair and blue eyes, he looks exceptionally handsome. With red lips and white teeth, facial features more delicate than a girl's, with long hair floating behind the shawl, even the vulgar gestures performed by outsiders such as pouring wine into the throat can feel a little pleasing in the hands of the teenager. His name is Lot and he is the king of this group. He poured the last few drops of wine into his throat, and he threw it directly on the grass. On one side, Lot squinted at the armored warrior standing opposite him. You said, King Arthur is going to marry me, his daughter? Now, is it finally time for King Arthur to make his debut? At the same time he thought secretly in his heart, he is not of this age. A few years ago, he traveled to the land of Great Britain in this era, and he also became the background board of King Arthur's legend. Just like a certain little official named Hugh Zongri in the East who went back 400 years in this era, he was a guy who couldn't do anything but the ability to give birth to a son. After giving birth to a group of very powerful children with Morgan, they were successfully killed by King Arthur. And, what if you really defeated King Arthur and became the King of Britain? England in this era is too small. It is completely different from the 5 great rascals of the later generations, and there is no way to compare it with the empire that never sets. Now England can be said to be the edge of the world and then the edge. In terms of area, it is a little more than Tutong Liao. In terms of culture, this is also a barren land, and in terms of population, it is not worth mentioning. So to fight King Arthur for this little place is really too bad. Plugins like ours can only assist the life traversers, so just stick to it honestly. Anyway, the subordinates are very loyal, and they have made some small inventions, and life is still very comfortable. Yes, the chief, King Arthur has ordered his national teacher Merlin to take Princess Morgan to go here to marry you. The messenger answered Lot. Well, okay, then of course welcome. Lot thought for a while, then agreed with a complex expression. Although it is said to marry Morgan, it will be a little troublesome in the future. But from the present point of view, this is undoubtedly an important way to get closer to King Yaozef. He is still Camelot's ally, and if he refuses to marry and has with King Yaozef, it is undoubtedly a slap in the face. You don't drink the leader toast, you turn the table with the leader. Good guy. It is estimated that I should not consider whether to fight King Arthur, but how to fight his father. Also, he is also looking forward to Morgan's appearance. As a man, he was a bit greedy. After traveling for several years, he has despaired of the women around him. After saying that after crossing, are you surrounded by beautiful ladies? As an otaku, or a virgin, it is impossible to have any feelings for rural women in the Middle Ages. The skin is rough and dark, the face is withered, and the figure is deformed. In this era, people who want to find a beautiful village girl in the same territory as in the novel can wash and sleep. As a lord, he obviously has the privilege of disposing of those under him at will, but for several years, Lot is still a virgin. Just think about the looks of women in this era. But Morgan is different. She was born as a nobleman, and she must be well maintained, and regardless of the legend or the news from Lot, this Morgan is an extremely beautiful woman. I like this. Lot couldn't help smiling. Besides, in the future, it will be hostile to King Arthur. Although Morgan is the inducement, the ambition of King Lot is also a very important factor. Now, it's different. Lot lay down, put one foot on the other, and looked at the stars very comfortably. Hope Morgan can meet my aesthetics. Here comes the chief. Merlin and Princess Morgan are here. Riding on the white horse, Lot heard this report from his men. Now that I knew that Morgan was coming soon, I simply waited here for a few more days. Anyway, I am going to be my own wife. If I wait to get married in the castle, it seems a bit disrespectful. Gentlemen, we Lot have been gentlemen for generations. So Lot was waiting for Morgan's arrival for several days. He put his hands on the pergola and looked into the distance. Soon, in his sight, a large number of knights appeared. There are still many big cars. Obviously, King Yaozef attached great importance to this marriage. In front of those knights, there were two men, one man and one woman. Lot looked at the woman. This should be Morgan. Riding on the white horse, the tall woman wore a black veil to cover her face. Behind the black veil, beautiful long silver hair floated behind him, even hanging down a lot on the horse's back. She wore black clothes and occasionally exposed snow-white skin, giving Lot's eyes a rough figure for her proud figure. This figure is perfect, as long as her face is not too ugly. She is already a goddess. Lot said in his heart. Take a few more glances quickly. It's just that after looking at it a few more times, Lot had a strange feeling. How do you feel so familiar? Then he looked to the side. Standing next to Morgan should be Merlin, white-clothed with white hair, holding a staff in his hand. His face has always been a narrow smile. It looks exactly like the kind of scammers who go online to scam others' money and feelings at any time. Lot was very familiar with his face. In his previous life, he was a very standard dead house. Grass. This is Xinayu. He gritted his teeth and said. Chapter 2. I heard his voice. Lot had never thought about it in this direction before. After all, he opened his eyes. It was the strong and dark castle of the Middle Ages. Even in the Lord's room, the scent of livestock can be smelled. And when I saw those territories, the peasants were weak, with ragged clothes, and looked like oppressed feudal serfs. And the maids in the castle are also aunts one by one. Every arm was almost as thick as Lot's thighs, which seemed to be a good hand at work. This is exactly what the feudal lord of the old age looked like. That is to say, Lot has worked hard over the past few years, and it looks a little bit like. Otherwise, Lot couldn't guarantee that he would become that kind of smelly guy. As a result, you actually told me that this is a tight month. Lot felt bad for a moment. What is normal Britain in this era? On the fringe of world civilization, where civilization and barbarism meet, it can be said to be a completely barren land. In this era, even the European continent, the civilization of the Roman Empire is like this. As Lot from later generations, there is still this cultural confidence. But, if this is a model month, Britain is not Britain anymore. That is the origin of the famous special product Saberface. All Saberfaces come from here. Okay, just kidding. The most important thing here in Britain is the remnant of the gods. Of course, Dongying in the east is also, but there is absolutely no way to compare it with here. And now it is approaching the Arthurian period, which is the last moment of the remaining gods. The creatures of various gods will make various waves on this island at this moment. There is more than one dragon. Even Allah might notice this. In this case, Lot wants to change his own destiny. It will undoubtedly become difficult. Headache tilde. Lot thought in his heart. But those are the things after, and now the first thing to do is to welcome his bride. Let's not talk about it afterwards. At least, Miss Morgan can be said to be very fragrant. She will be my wife next, and neither my destiny nor hers will let this tragic thing happen again. His Royal Highness, it seems that King Lot takes you very seriously. You see, he came so far from his castle to greet us. Sitting on the horse, Merlin said to Morgan with a smiling face. Morgan glanced at Merlin with eyes under the veil. If it weren't for the father, I wouldn't be like this. Morgan wrinkled his nose under the veil slightly, and seemed a little dissatisfied with the incident. She is not the enchantress who will mess up Britain in the future, but just a teenage girl. Originally, she had great expectations for the future love. As a result, a few days ago, her father, King Yaosa, suddenly told her to let her marry King Lot, Camelot's ally. For King Lot, Morgan had no idea what he looked like, whether he was tall or short, ugly or good-looking, none of these. It's like opening a blind box. Before you open this box, you don't even know what's inside the box. The most frightening thing is that this matter is not up to you yet. So, you say if you make Morgan happy. That is a weird thing. Your Royal Highness. Don't worry, King Lot can be said to be impeccable from his looks. As if seeing Morgan's thoughts, Merlin glanced at her and immediately said with a smile. Morgan glanced at Merlin, and then slowly complained. My father and I said that if you are a girl, when facing Merlin, don't trust even any letter. A distressed smile appeared on Merlin's face. Your Majesty's words are sometimes a bit one-sided. Morgan didn't say anything, just watched quietly. Seeing Merlin also scratched his head distressed. Say nothing. Morgan stopped talking to him, but looked at the upcoming knights, silently waiting for Lot's arrival. What is he like? Morgan's heart was filled with anxiety and fear. I'm coming. It's almost here. Morgan had already begun to see the knight approaching. Then, she saw the very handsome boy in the middle. Cough cough. It seems that Go Shimlin sometimes tells the truth to women. Well, but no wonder. After all, I am my father's only child. In the future, Merlin will also be my subject, and he shouldn't lie to me anymore. The corner of Morgan's mouth under the veil couldn't help but upturned. I have seen His Royal Highness Morgan. When the two met, Lot said to Morgan in a voice full of magnetism. Okay. Under the veil, Morgan wanted to nod slightly. Then, at this moment, she suddenly heard a strange sound. Is this Morgan? I finally saw her in person. Unfortunately, if it weren't for her sister, she would definitely become the king of Camelot. Perhaps nothing will happen in the future. Okay? What sound? Under the veil, Morgan frowned slightly. How did this voice come from? Who would talk to me like this? Also, what is he talking about? My little sister? When did I have a sister? And why do you say that with my sister here? I won't be the king of Camelot. Even if the nobles oppose me as a king because I'm a woman, how can my sister become a king? This person, what does it mean to tell me like this? Thinking of this in her mind, she quietly made a magic gesture. She was originally a genius magician, coupled with her identity, so although she is not very old, her strength cannot be underestimated. This way, the magic power was released, and everyone around could clearly feel it. His Royal Highness, did something happen? Merlin asked Morgan. Even if you are dissatisfied with this future husband, you won't use magic to attack, right? Moreover, his appearance can be said to be extraordinarily handsome, better than me. Even the fairies in the lake will be greedy. There shouldn't be a problem with his appearance, right? I have to say that Morgan's sudden act like this made everyone present a little bit embarrassed. Merlin, didn't you hear anyone talking? Morgan asked Merlin. Merlin looked around, frowned first, and then said to Morgan, His Royal Highness? No one had spoken except for King Lot just now. Well, yes, I haven't heard anyone speak. Lot also said to Morgan in an affirmative tone. Okay? What's the situation then? Morgan continued to think in his mind. Merlin said at this moment, His Royal Highness may be a little tired. Let's go to the camp first. I was negligent. Lot patted his head, then said in an apologetic tone, What is happening? Wouldn't it be Morgan who was dissatisfied with me? I'm so handsome. Does she still look down on it? Morgan heard the voice again. The only difference is that Morgan heard this tone. It seems that King Lot in front of him said it. Okay? What he said? Morgan frowned tightly. Why did he say that to me? But shortly after, she realized that it was wrong. Wrong. After saying that word just now, he didn't speak. Moreover, what he said just now was too shocking. If he really spoke, Merlin shouldn't have reacted at all. What's the situation then? Could it be that he secretly told me with magic? Unfortunately, I had already investigated the record of King Lot when I came here. His skill is outstanding among knights, but he is not magical at all. There is nothing mysterious in his hands. So what is the reason? Morgan thought in his heart. With this thought in his mind, Morgan watched Lot quietly. Through the veil, those azure blue eyes that looked like lakes were watching Lot. This kind of gaze made Lot, who was fairly skilled, caught it clearly. Well, looking at her eyes looking at me, it seems to be interested in me. Well, yes, it seems that our handsome looks are universal. Not only my subordinates and civilians, even the princesses from Camelot will be fascinated by me. Hearing Lot's words, Morgan couldn't help but tilt his mouth up. Unexpectedly, this guy turned out to be such a narcissistic, handsome, really handsome. This is the most handsome boy I'm afraid of ever. But this kind of narcissistic energy is really nothing. At this time, Morgan watched Lot carefully again and found that he hadn't actually spoken. At the same time, there is no trace of magic being displayed. Morgan also roughly guessed the source of this voice. This is the word in his heart. Heartfelt. It's really interesting. This guy is so narcissistic in his heart under the seriousness of his appearance. Morgan thought a little funny in his mind. Unexpectedly, I still have such ability. Why didn't I have it before? Oh, no, I don't have this ability for others either. Forget that old fellow Merlin. Even if it is the maid by my side, I can't hear their voices. So, is Lot alone? Is he alone special? After I entered into a marriage contract with him, I can hear his voice. Thinking of this, Morgan's face flushed slightly. Fate is wonderful. A little sweetness passed to my heart. But after this sweetness, she thought of a question. What's the first sentence before Lot? With my sister, I can't be the king of Camelot. My little sister. What does it look like? Morgan looked at Lot, wanting to hear him again. However, at this time, she felt her eyes astringent, and a feeling of fatigue came. It seems to be telling Morgan. That's all for today's exploration, and the rest will be discussed later. This feeling. Therefore, Morgan can only speculate secretly in his heart. What is going on with this? Why does my father have a younger sister? I really don't know at all. And, why would I not become the queen of Camelot with my sister here? If it is due to gender issues, other nobles do not want a woman to be Camelot's king, and must let a man be the throne. So why does my sister have? And why would I not have it? Sexism can't always happen to me. But it won't happen when I wait for my sister. This is really weird. Besides, how did Lot know about this? Even if I have a younger sister, this matter must be a secret among the royal family's secrets. Where did Lot know about it? Morgan really wanted to grab Lot's arm now and ask what it was because of it. However, these are his heartfelt words. How could Morgan ask? Oh, so anxious. Morgan thought in his heart. She can only speculate secretly in her heart now. Beside, Merlin looked at Morgan and Lot, feeling strange in his heart. The things now are about to break away from the future that I have encountered. The first encounter between King Lot and Morgan was not like this at all. Morgan had been watching, not out of his sight. So is the problem with Lot. Merlin quietly looked at Lot. Cannot see clearly. This feeling made Merlin feel strange. His future has completely turned into a mystery. Interesting. Really interesting. Maybe the fate I saw before will change. He chuckled lightly, thinking secretly in his heart. This degree of blindness to the future by oneself made Merlin feel interesting. Although not strong, it was very strange to Merlin. As the objects of these two men's minds, Lot is also thinking about a very critical question in his mind at the moment. What are you going to eat for dinner today? After staying outside and eating barbecue for so many days, I'm almost tired of eating, he thought in his heart. Chapter 3 The Angler Never Air Force. If you don't eat barbecue, why not try hot pot? Lot thought about the ready-made food a little bit in his heart, and could only think of this kind of more appropriate. Although there is no such thing as a pepper in Britain in this era, there is a plug-in in Lot's hands. As a traverser, it is definitely not enough if there are not a few plug-ins on the body these days. Even talking to other traversers would be laughed out of their teeth. It's just that Lot's plug-in is actually very practical. His plug-in is called Fishing Guy's Never Air Force. Listening to this name, you will know what kind of task this or other existence is. And this plug-in allows Lot to bring a fishing rod to the long river, and then use the fishing rod to randomly fish any items that may appear in any era. However, the item to be caught cannot exceed the endurance limit of the fishing rod. At the same time, the fishing rod must be of a level that Lot can use alone. The material science of Britain in this era can be said to be very primitive, and even bamboo can't be found. The raw material for fishing rods can only be some wood with better toughness. The size of the thing fished out of this material can be imagined. There are restrictions on size and weight, and the timeline is random. Never Air Force, just saying that you can catch something, but you don't say what you will catch. For example, Lot once caught a fossil. This is for Jill. Sometimes, he fished out a mobile phone. Then, what about the signal? What about the network? I can't even pass face verification. What is the use? Therefore, Lot's hands had a lot of useless things, which he kept in his castle. The advancement of science and technology and the development of productivity have never been achieved by relying on a few small items, and Lot was also a liberal arts student in his previous life, so the things he fished out were at best used by him to transform his life. That's it. Just like now, he can eat hot pot with Morgan and Merlin. Is this really edible? Looking at the ruddy soup in the pot, Morgan said with a trembling corner of his mouth. At this time, Morgan lifted her veil, revealing her full face. Well, as expected, Sabba face. But compared to the second dimension, this face looks more lovely. Being able to concentrate heroism and cuteness on one face at the same time, this face is really cute. Oh, it shouldn't be said that she is a Sabba face. She is Morgan, the eldest daughter of King Arthur, and my wife. Lot thought secretly in his heart. At this moment, looking at her hesitant and scared expression, Lot felt very cute. Try it, I won't be able to harm you. He spoke to Morgan in a very gentle tone. His words made Morgan a little relieved. At the same time, she also looked at the food and tools in front of her with the same doubts as before. How did these come out? How much does Lot know? Morgan felt that his curiosity was getting heavier. She wanted to explore Lot's heart again. However, the tired feeling from the spirit told her that it takes a while to rest to hear his heart beat. At least, we need to wait until tomorrow. Now, I still have to eat well. Well, yes, there is no problem with these things at all. Beside, Merlin was already moving. Although it was the first time to use chopsticks, Merlin already knew how to use this tool. Picked up a piece of lamb and put it in the mouth. The pungent sensation immediately filled the mouth. Yes, not bad, Merlin said with a smile. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with Merlin doing this, Morgan was relieved. She also followed the way Merlin and Lot did, and picked up a piece of meat and put it in her mouth. Chew, chew. Then Morgan froze. It's so spicy. She let out a cry. After making such a sound, Merlin smiled triumphantly. Some things are not acceptable to the Britons of this age, Merlin said with a smile. Sorry, this matter is my problem, or, you come to taste the clear soup. Lot is also a little sorry for things like Morgan. Okay, Morgan nodded slightly. Then, another piece of lamb in the broth was picked up. Dip it a few times with the dipping material, and put it in the mouth again. Then, a smile appeared on her face. Good. Even in later generations, Great Britain has not produced any delicacies. In Great Britain in this era, the diet is even worse. Lot's seasonings were all fished out of later generations, and for this era, it is undoubtedly a dimensionality reduction blow. Therefore, Morgan will feel extremely delicious. So she started to move her chopsticks. But judging from the results, she is far incomparable with her sister in at least one aspect. If her sister was there, let alone the meat, even the pot would have disappeared without knowing when. After Morgan only ate some, he said he couldn't eat any more. And Merlin, without knowing when, had already left with great interest. Morgan and Lot were left here now. Seeing that there were only two people, Morgan wanted to talk to Lot about her sister before that, but she opened her mouth and didn't know how to talk. What's wrong? Lot spoke to Morgan. Morgan thought for a while, and then said to Lot, I'm just curious about your things. These things obviously don't come from Britain. I don't know how you made them. Did you create them yourself? But it's a man's secret. Lot didn't explain the tropic to Morgan. Although your own plugin is not very useful, it is not easy to talk to others. If someone else knows about his own plugin, he will lose a whole card. Don't do this. Seeing that there was no answer, Morgan continued to ask Lot, so, do you have more new things? She wanted to know Lot better, wanted to know about him. At the same time, you can also know the accuracy of what he said today. Moreover, if what he said is true, he has to figure out a way. There are certain things that you must not give up. Well, when I go back, I will show you more. Lot looked at Morgan and said with a smile. Chapter 4. The water in the kingdom is too deep. I still have to take care of it. 4K. Really? Can I see something more interesting? After Morgan heard Lot say this, his pretty face showed a very interested expression. Although it is not very clear, Morgan is sure that Lot's heart is not the same as what he shows on the surface. He is a second-generation ancestor who pays no attention to anything and relies on his aristocratic status to act recklessly. In other words, he is not a traditional knight. Well, of course, after you go back, you will definitely see more objects that you can't see in Camelot. Lot looked at Morgan's inquiry gaze and said with a smile. Lotna was very happy that Morgan wanted to be interested in the things he brought. If she could indulge in this, she might have forgotten to fight with her sister for the King of Britain. If that were the case, it couldn't be better. Well, Morgan's depraved plan. This idea seems to be a good one, Lot thought in his heart. Rubbing his chin lightly, Lot looked at Morgan carefully. The two are getting closer this time. The dignified but noble temperament rushed to his face. My, bring such a person to fall together. It seems that thinking about it is really exciting. All men have two hobbies. Drag Liang's house into the water and let the prostitute follow him. Asking Morgan to give up his pursuit of Camelot and switch to other places, whether it is for her or me, or her sister, King Arthur, is a very good thing. Although the Orkney rule is small, it will definitely be much richer than Camelot in the future. This hot expression did not leave Morgan's sight. Looking at Lot's expression in anticipation of his past, Morgan was even more convinced that Lot was not simple. It seems that Lot actually has a gap in his heart. Well, he married me. Is it also in his plan? I'm going to see what he wants to do. Looking at Lot playing hash, Morgan thought in his heart. Maybe these are disguise. Morgan is now very eager to hope that tomorrow will come soon, and then let himself look at Lot's heart a few more times. Regardless of his ambitions, it's still about myself, about my sister, or about myself. Lot, can you tell me everything? Lot did not see her expression, but took a look at the sky and said to Morgan, it's getting late. Princess Morgan, you'd better go to rest early. Tomorrow morning, we will continue on our journey. You must know that there is still a long way to go to my castle. Okay, all right. Morgan nodded slightly. At the same time, he looked at Lot with an expectant look. Lot, see you tomorrow. Until tomorrow, I will have to take a good look at what your mind is. Lot looked at Morgan's eyes, feeling a little bit about to be stripped. Damn, I remember that Morgan was a very noble woman when I saw it. Why is it that I saw it today, so it's completely different from before? He thought so in his heart. Forget it, go to bed first. At least until I gave birth to Gil and Gareth, I was safe. Taking advantage of this time, I should hurry up and continue to develop. If you want to change your fate, you still have to hurry up. Lot returned to his tent. Then, he took a pocket watch from his arms. This is your own plug-in. As long as I stayed in the sun before, I would let the pointer of this pocket watch start to move. And when the pointer of the pocket watch reached 12 o'clock, Lot could turn on his own plug-in. Bring a fishing rod and you can start fishing. Well, let's get some more sunshine tomorrow, or it will be 12 o'clock again in 2 days. Lot picked up his pocket watch and said, but as soon as he spoke, he found that his pocket watch had some problems. It seems that the pointer that was still in the middle has now reached the 12 o'clock position. This, too fast. Is it because of Morgan's appearance? What happened today was something that surprised Lot more than the previous years combined. From the original medieval painting style, it has directly become the magical painting style of the Moon World. This change in painting style made Lot feel that most of his previous preparations had been abolished in an instant. I had always thought that this pocket watch was actually recharged by solar energy, and when it was 100% enough, I could make myself fishing. But now it seems that this pocket watch is more likely to absorb magic. Lot didn't forget the identity of Morgan. She is not so much the child of King Arthur, but rather the child of the British Isles. If Altria was the king chosen by man, Morgan was the real master identified by the British Isles. Her aptitude, etc., can be said to be extremely strong. Something like magic is really nothing to her. Before he could think about it, the pocket watch at this time had already begun to remind Lot. If you don't go in for a long time, then you can only wait for the next time. So, I look forward to having good luck this time. Lot quickly picked up the fishing rod placed in a corner of the tent. The angler never has the Air Force. You have to let the system recognize that you are a fisherman. In the past, because he often went out hunting, in order to avoid being unable to find a fishing rod when he needed it, Lot always put it in the corner of the tent with him. Suddenly the magic value was full this time. Lot didn't want to catch the blind, and then wasted an opportunity in vain. Picking up the fishing rod, Lot said silently in his heart. Then, his whole person just disappeared here abruptly. Opening his eyes again, a small river appeared in front of him. The river in the small river is not big, but the water inside is not clear at all. It cannot be said to be muddy, but chaos. Hey, I should see what I can catch next. Putting the homemade fishing rod on his shoulders, Lot walked over aggressively. Looks like this. It's like the kind of big guy who has cried fish pond bosses like fishing. In fact, Lot's fishing skills are actually only the most basic level. It's like playing Go and playing Tan Yuan. What I want is this momentum. If I can't beat you, I will bluff you first. Pull the rod, and then shake the rod. Hey! Lot uttered a clear cry and threw the hook firmly in. And after throwing it in, Lot's ability began to activate. The knight does not die with his bare hands. Oh, no, it's the angler who didn't die in the Air Force. After a few seconds, his hands sank. Okay, here it comes. Lot picked up the fishing rod in his hand and pulled it up vigorously. There was something hanging on the fishing rod, and under Lot's movement, it flew straight towards his hand. Reaching over, he caught this. After catching it, Lot took a closer look at what he had caught this time. Then, he looked weird. How is this thing? The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. At this time, he began to feel the pressure around him began to grow stronger. Well, if Lot is a fisherman, then the river is a fish pond for a long time, and now it seems that the fish pond owner watched Lot catch something and started to drive people. Negative ratings. Can't anyone take advantage of it? Lot complained about this time in his heart, and then he was teleported out. With the thing in your hand, look left and right. How do you say this thing? Forget it, I'll talk about it tomorrow. If you encounter difficulties, get a good night's sleep. In the early morning of the next day, Lot and Morgan both woke up early. I saw my future husband, wife, for the first time yesterday, and I was very satisfied with him in the first impression. This state of excitement prevented them from sleeping well this night. However, both of them are young men. Morgan is an excellent magician. Lot is also very good at being a knight. Not sleeping well this night is nothing to them. Lot happened to meet Morgan when he woke up in the morning. A trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Morgan saw his expression with some curiosity on his face. What happened to him? At the same time, that feeling came to her heart again. If you think about it, you can definitely hear what Lot is thinking. 3 sentences? Let me try it first. Morgan began to listen. That thing, should I give it to Morgan as a gift? So tangled. Okay. What? Looking at Lot, Morgan thought in his heart. Is there anything he wants to give me? But sorry, is this guy that kind of unexpected innocence? Morgan thought of Camelot's other noble boys and immediately made a comparison. Then, a conclusion was reached. Those other nobles of Camelot. Not only was he inferior to Lot in terms of length, but in terms of feelings, he was not comparable to Lot at all. Well, in terms of politics, he has extremely superb ability, but in terms of feelings, it is just a blank paper. Such a person is so cute. Looking at Lot like this, Morgan began to appear as if he and himself were sitting on the throne of Camelot. Yes, Morgan never gave up his plan to become Camelot and even the Lord of Britain. Even if Lot said that she still has a younger sister in this world, she would not change her mind at all. Sister, the water of this throne is too deep. You can't grasp it. You should leave it to your sister. My sister is getting older and she has to bear more. He wanted to ask Lot directly about the existence of his sister, but in order to avoid direct inquiries to Merlin and Lot, Morgan decided to chat with Lot first and then go to the arrogant. Good morning, Your Majesty King Orkney. Morgan saluted Lot. Well, early. Liu Ove nodded. Then a little embarrassed said to Morgan, Morgan, you still don't call me Your Majesty. From now on, you should just call me Lot. Lot is not very willing to call himself His Majesty or something. Mainly shame. The territory is not as big as a city in the previous life. As for the population, it is even scarcer. And such a small amount of land and people dare to come to be king. Lot only felt that he was like a frog sitting at the bottom of a well. Well, I got it. Morgan did not eavesdrop on this psychological activity. After all, there are only 2 opportunities left today. Well, let's make a bold guess. Did Lot feel that his position is not worthy of his own character, so he said that? Well, it seems that his ambition is really big. Morgan speculated in his heart. Immediately, she thought for a while, and then with a curious expression on her face, she pretended to say casually to Lot, by the way, Lot, what do you think of the kingdom of Camelot? I'm still a little curious. Under the leadership of King Arthur, Camelot defeated countless enemies and made the kingdom of Camelot prosperous. No one can compare the credit. I believe that King User will be able to unify the entire British continent in the future. Lot thought for a moment, then spoke to Morgan. Well, these are pure compliments. Morgan squinted at Lot. This time I will save face to my future old husband, and blow him up first, so that he won't marry his daughter to me. Morgan began to listen to Lot's heart. After hearing the first half sentence, Morgan couldn't help but want to laugh. This guy, under his solemn appearance, what kind of soul is hidden? Morgan continued to listen to Lot's second half. But from a practical point of view, King Asa also knew about the war. For other things, I don't know at all. In the war for many years, King Yausa has always won more and less defeat, but the enemy has become stronger and stronger, while Camelot's strength has become weaker and weaker, and the people's lives have become worse and worse. In my opinion, this Camelot can be said to be at stake. Hearing Lot's heartfelt voice, Morgan was a little silent. Regarding this matter, Morgan said that he felt that Lotna's words were a bit alarmist, but after thinking about it, he didn't have many errors in what he said. Camelot first experienced a court coup, and when his father and uncle finally regained the throne, his uncle passed away early, and his father succeeded to lead Camelot to become stronger. On the surface, Camelot is indeed thriving, but the number of enemies has become more and more. One is not easy. This Camelot will be in an abyss that will never be restored. Therefore, Lot can see clearly the crisis under the raging flames, and the political level is really strong. Morgan admired it in his heart. Then, she sighed softly, and said to Lot in the tone of Lot's heart, "But in my opinion, Camelot is in a deep crisis in this heyday." "I don't know, Lot. What do you think of these things? Do you have any good solutions?" When she said this, Lot's pupils were slightly open, and he looked a little surprised. Chapter 5 Rewarding Farming War, First More. Did this Morgan think of the same place as me? Lot was slightly surprised. No, she might be testing me. As the object of the marriage, she has a bond that communicates the relationship between me and her father, King Yasha. If I go to tell her something wrong that King Yaozef has done, then maybe she will secretly report to her father, His Royal Highness, I'm a little king who only knows to stay in the 1/3 acre of my own castle. How would I know about King Arthur? Lot thought for a while, and then said to Lot very cautiously. Yes. Morgan heard Lot say this, and looked at his expression again, knowing that this guy was not telling the truth at all. Morgan was a little angry. In my heart, I can't wait to stretch out my small fist to punch Lot's head hard. I wanted to ask you about it, but you actually kept it hidden from me. Humphrey, Lot, you are so dishonest. Morgan squinted at Lot. Our enemies are getting more and more. My father has won many battles over the years. However, our Camelot enemies have become stronger and stronger. Not to mention, it is my uncle, the humble King Votiging, and the Saxons. It's a very troublesome thing. She said to Lot. I believe that with His Majesty King Arthur's vision, we will definitely be able to win the final victory. Lot said to Morgan with a smile. Victory hammer. Do you know the victory of the war every day? All idiots. War is a continuation of politics, and you know how to fight every day. It's no wonder that the country's economy is not poor if this goes on. Let alone high-end financial and economic warfare. Even the most basic farming warfare system does not exist. Britain is inherently small, and you are still deserted. How can you continue like this? If I were the king of Camelot, I would directly start rewarding the farming war. Moreover, farming is more important than war. For the peasants and nobles who are good at farming. This is unrealistic. But even the status of officials at all levels can be rushed. As long as food production goes up, it will be very convenient to start wars. It's not much easier to develop first before dealing with that humble king. Taking advantage of today's third chance, Morgan listened to Lot's heart. Well, I also believe in my father. I believe he will win the final victory. Then, the smile on her face did not change, but he was cursing secretly in his heart. Okay, Lot, you guy turned out to say that we are idiots. I will remember this account for you. I am a very vengeful person. In the future, I will definitely return. But putting this sentence aside, Morgan found that there was nothing wrong with what he said. They always only think about war, but they rarely think about why war should be carried out. Before, it was because of the hatred of the country and the family, but later I just wanted to protect this British land. They have only one purpose: to defeat the enemy. What about the others? Is war a continuation of politics? Will war begin to achieve political goals? Morgan felt some truth, but not quite sure. However, she remembered the second item that Lot thought of very clearly: reward farming wars, especially to develop farming. Morgan also knows that fighting is very necessary for logistics. How many times her father, King Yaoza, sent troops, but it was eventually lost because of logistical matters. Regarding the previous solution, King Yaoza's solution was to levy more taxes on the farmers. However, the farmers had not left much food. King Yaoza also knew that he couldn't really collect all the farmers' seeds, so logistical issues have always been a big problem for Camelot. Now, Lot's method seems to be a very good idea. We reward the farming war. As long as the farmers work hard to cultivate the land, they can get official positions. Then, they will try their best to cultivate arable land for us. Well, after I get the throne of Camelot in the future, I can easily gather more troops and defeat the underdogs. I'll tell Merlin later, so he can tell my father quickly. It seems that Lot is really capable. It's just that this mouth is not so good. Lot didn't know at this moment, he was already marked by Morgan. He thought that his casual remarks could already be fooled. We are now ready to go. I'll go and direct my men to start. You and Gwashi Milin should also prepare early. We still have a way to go, he said to Morgan. Okay. Morgan nodded slightly. Seeing Lot walk away, Morgan thought for a while, then turned his head and went to find Merlin. Arriving at Merlin's tent, before Morgan asked, Merlin in white had walked out. Your Royal Highness, if you don't go to contact your fiancé this morning, what are you going to do with me anyway? He said to Morgan. I think you have been secretly observing us a long time ago, and you must have known the idea of my coming here. Morgan looked at Merlin's expression, and immediately went back and called Lot and 2 people to beat him up. This, I really don't know. Your Royal Highness, King Lot is a very special existence. Merlin shook his head and said to Morgan. Lot treated him as if he had opened the fog of war, and he couldn't clearly see him and the things around him. Just now, the conversation between him and Morgan was not clear at all. But after he and Morgan separated, he saw Morgan. Yes, he is indeed a very special existence. Morgan remembered what Lot was thinking, and nodded seriously. Then she continued to look at Merlin. This time, I want to tell you one thing. I ask you to persuade further to do one thing. Then Morgan told Merlin all about the farming war. And Merlin, after hearing Morgan say this, just looked at her seriously. Princess, who taught you this? Well, I don't need to explain it to you yet. Morgan looked at Merlin. You can carry out this matter for me. Yes. Merlin nodded, then picked up his staff. Okay, I'll explain this to His Majesty King Arthur. It just so happens that he will come here after he has dealt with Camelot's affairs. It just so happens, I don't think I can go far to meet him. Your Royal Highness, I have worked so hard, so you must tell His Majesty the King to give me more rewards. With that said, he rolled over and rode on the horse, ready to walk towards where he came from.